Counting the
Us.
All right. Welcome, Nicole. Thank you for being willing to interview with us. And today we've invited Nicole Walker, who is a dietitian, and so we just want to ask some questions. And my first question is, what is a dietitian?
Very simply put, dietitians are food and nutrition experts. That is the most basic way, but we're kind of like food nutrition scientists. We translate the science of food and nutrition to like everyday practical things you can do to be healthy. Well, nutritionally healthy. There's other things you need to do, like exercising and other things like that. Dietitians are very much scientists, though, and most people don't know that. A little clarification: nutritionists in America, that's where I live right now. I may move. I miss you guys in Korea. Nutritionists are not protected in America. Anybody can say that they are a nutritionist. They could go on YouTube, watch 5 videos, and be like, "I'm a nutritionist," and nobody could say anything against that because nutritionist is not protected. Protected titles like doctor or dentist, you have to have credentials to think you are a dietitian. If anyone was interested in becoming a dietitian, they want to know what does that entail. It's a 7-year process. You might be able to speak into 6 years. So the first thing you do is you have to get a bachelor's degree. You have to take classes in a lot of things. So physiology, you have to take classes in food nutrition sciences, and that's a whole special list. But just before you get to those classes, you have to do microbiology, anatomy and physiology, lots and lots of chemistry. I'm trying to remember all the different chemistry classes you do: general chemistry, biochemistry, metabolism, which is biochemistry of the body. And then you need to do other classes that have to do with food, such as food service management. That's usually a year-long class. Business, so psychology, physiology, computer sciences, just because everybody eats. And so you could be working in a variety of areas. So we have to take a very broad but a very specific at the same time program. So once you've made it through all of that, and then you have to take like medical nutrition science, which focuses on disease. If you have diabetes, if you are trying to get pregnant, or if you're a new mother, if you are a teenager and you're having not a good time with your skin, all of those classes. And once you're done with those, you have to take an internship for roughly 1,200 hours. That's really, if you're really pushed, you could probably get it done in about 6 months, but it more like is like 8 or 9, sometimes 10 months. And of course, you go through all the specifics. You'll do a renal, your kidney failure, you'll do heart disease, you'll do children, infant mothers, you'll do a lot of different things on how to run a business, what corporate health, because people have to eat. And companies found that it's cheaper to keep your workers healthy than wait till they get sick. The corporate look into that. Schools that serve meals, those are also dietitians that go into that. So all of this is part of your internship. Now, once you're done with that, some people take the exam immediately. Some people do their master's and then take the exam. Either way, go do your master's first or the exam first. And this is a national exam. It is 2.5 hours of torture, and they'll ask you like really small questions like, when looking at B12, what is the mineral needed for proper metabolism or something? Or which part of your small intestine absorbs this nutrient? They might ask you all this stuff like, a pound of strawberries costs this much, but you only, like, once you cut off the stem and stuff, it only yields maybe 80%. The recipe calls for, 2 strawberries per person. How many pounds of strawberries would you need to feed 150 people?
Wow.
You also have management because we do a lot of managing a kitchen. So they'll ask you which theory would apply if you are penalizing a worker for showing up late, or if a person is standing too long, what neuronal problems could they have? So it's very, very broad, but it is very, very specific as well. So this is why dietitians are always nutritionists, but nutritionists are not always dietitians.
I see.
So yeah, so I did my master's first, and then I went back and did my bachelor. It was my second bachelor. It was my first bachelor of psychology. And the reason I became a dietitian is because when I did my master's at some that was my favorite class. I absolutely loved the chemistry of nutrition. We're like venturing out right, and I'm talking about brand structure and amino acids and which ones are essential. And I could do this all day. So that was kind of the final stroke. But I've always been interested in food from, I think, high school. I started working here, and I loved cooking for people and having it in both nutrition and cake. Because I've had some nutritious food. Like, this is good for you. And I'm just like,
That's good.
So both having the nutrition there and the taste there, and even the presentation. We talked some about food design, and some people go into that area, food photography, and cooking shows. Like, dietitians can do all of that. So that's where I started. I've always loved working with food, especially in like big restaurants where you're hundreds of people a day. But deciding to go back didn't happen until I did my master's in public health, because I realized there's so much misinformation about food and about being healthy and using food for health. Right now, I think we're still in the keto. You guys heard about that?
Yeah.
It's really big in America. Keto is a real diet that can work if you have seizure. That's how it was designed. With a doctor and a dietitian, a specialized dietitian, you can get specialist certification. Somehow it got known that people who started doing the keto diet lost weight, and now people are using it for weight loss when it was actually a side effect. And the reason the keto diet started is because it was a way to help people who had seizures. So what happens is your body normally runs on glucose. That's your brain's preferred food. It can break it down from fat or protein. It's a lot. But it's made for glucose. And glucose is like carbohydrate. People who say that carbs are just like, so we don't eat food because pretty much all food has carbs. The keto cauliflower, that's not real because cauliflower is mostly carbohydrates. It was something that was made for people who had seizures, and we had effect. And other people were like, oh, I do keto, I want to lose weight. I'm like, first, leave keto alone. You need a specialized doctor and a specialized dietitian. So being able to know things and educate people, like, this is the truth of food and health, because you study the science of the human body and the science of food, but then you're able to translate and say that that's legit, this is not. That's kind of where my passion lies, helping people find the truth with food.
Wow, that's awesome.
So you talked about how pretty much a dietitian turns the science about food into practical daily dietary life, and you studied your master's first and you loved it, and you went back to school because you did your bachelor in a different area, and you did nutrition for bachelor's again because you loved it, and you talked about corporate setting, you talked about school setting, talked about managing the kitchen, all these different things. So, and you said you would consider coming to Korea. Does that mean you can work as a dietitian in Korea?
Yes. The reason I left Korea is because there's only one program in Korea that is the National Academy. So the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, the AND, they're the one who do the whole process of this school is certified as not for dietetics. Remember, nutrition anybody can do, but for the field of dietetics, it would be AND that decide which programs are accredited and which ones are not. And because I hadn't decided on which country, I thought if I got the highest level of credentialing, that would be nationally, kind of internationally recognized anywhere, I could go anywhere and say, listen, I'm a dietitian nutritionist, and they could be like, okay, we know exactly your education, internship, your examination level. So the only school that has that certification in Korea is Kyunghee University. And I believe they're down in like Busan area, but their program is entirely in Korean. So I have to take 3 years of like studying Korean and then 4 years of doing the actual nutrition program. And most of the dietitians, because Korea is much farther ahead of the game, I feel, in certain areas, most of the dietitians in Korea only work in schools and a few work in hospitals. Whereas I didn't know, thinking maybe I would open my own business for consulting or working in like corporate health.
Yeah.
If they have so those are the areas I was thinking of going into. But I'm not sure yet. I still have options. So yeah, I wanted to go back to Korea to work. I still have the language barrier to hurdle, but
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, so I guess you're already fully certified and qualified to work as a dietitian in America, right?
I still have that last step. I took my examination, and I'm happy actually to say that I only missed it by 1 point. It was a passing of 25, and I got a 24. So I'm going to retake the test week after next, and I'm sure I'll be good. Lord willing. And then I'll be all done, and then I just have to keep up my education. So most people, it takes them 3 to 6 times. I've heard as many as 12 to pass the examination. So yeah, and it's not a cheap examination either. It's a little, it's not terribly pricey, but it's not like money you want to just throw away. So my friends were actually really impressed. They were like, you got that high on your first try. You're probably gonna do great on your second. But yeah, there are people who it takes quite a while to pass.
Wow.
Sometimes, and there are businesses that have developed that all they do is help people pass this examination. That's it. And again, people, because remember, you can't work as an RD without that test. So people are 3 and 4 years out, like not able to work as a dietitian because they can't pass the exam. So I was thankfully just 1 point off, and I'll be taking the exam.
Wow. So you're almost there, and you just need to take another one after studying a little bit more.
So that's what I've been doing here, studying and teaching. And I think teaching helps you learn, because as you're teaching, and so it's not just sitting book and reading, but you're answering questions and you're thinking about things differently.
Yeah. Did you say you studied psychology before you studied a dietitian after you did your master's in that area?
Yes. So my first degree was counseling psychology and English. At the time, I had wanted to be reading special. Actually, to be honest, my parents both work in the medical field, and they were like, "You would like dietitian because I don't deal with blood, body fluids." My mom is a nurse, and she's like, "Oh yeah, this came in the ER or something," and I'm like, "I can't." Yeah, I have several members of my family that were nurses, and they were like, "Okay, maybe nursing's something for you, but you seem to do so maybe dietitian." But I didn't like the idea of working in a hospital, so I kind of was like, I don't want to work in a hospital. I want to work in a different area. So that's why I thought, I really love lectures and learning. And so at the time, I wanted to be a reading specialist. And there were several ways to do it. the one that was the fastest and the cheapest was to go into psychology because you study about the way people learn, get their reading certification after that. So that's why I psychology, counseling psychology for my first degree because I want to counsel people on, how are they learning information? How are they able to grasp new information? Old. But it comes with handy because food is never just food. People have attachments to, well, I've eaten this every Christmas with my family, or when I'm sad, I eat this, or when I feel good, but it's just never food. So I spend a lot of my time counseling people on helping them make healthier food decisions, helping them learn how to cook, boost their self-esteem about, America is really bad for people growing up on fast food. Schools that don't really teach anymore. So there's a huge nutrition education deficit. And I actually spent a lot of time in counseling. So definitely wasn't a waste doing that degree first. And then my many years of teaching. I think teaching about nutrition is probably my favorite thing to do. So that's kind of how things have played out.
So you began to study psychology and counseling and English to teach people how to read, to pretty much help people personally by talking to them, listening to them, and giving them all the necessary things they need to know. And then you began to teach in Korea as an English teacher in the university, and while you were teaching here, you studied also at Dietitian? You studied
When
first.
I taught.
Oh, I knew.
Yeah, so I was teaching at a school because I just love that age. They're just so, hey, we have crayons, they love you.
Okay.
So I was teaching, I was going to school full time, and then after I finished, I was working at the university.
Oh, I see. So for how many years did you work at the elementary school?
2. Yeah, I think it was 2.
Okay. So you worked at the elementary school for 2 years teaching English and moved up to university, and then you were working and studying at the same time, and you got your master's here in Korea. Wow, cool. So you said whatever you learned from your previous degree came in handy as you were helping people about diet. So so reading specialist, is that to help people with special need, or is that to help people with general need in the area of reading?
Yeah, so the degree it was just general counseling, and reading specialist was the area to go state general. So I can help anyone in the process of learning new information, and it could be learning about food, it could be learning about languages. It's simply equipping people with the tools to take in new information and kind of integrate that into their existence.
Oh,
So it does reading special because that's a separate certification, but I never pursued that. I like kind of the general.
Oh, I see.
Help people learn. How do I now change? How do I now make changes based on I've learned something new? And even how do we accept new things that are very different from maybe what we grew up with?
Oh, so reading specialist is not just contained in this idea of reading, but it's generally helping people learn something new.
Mm-hmm.
So they usually work in the school setting?
Those usually do work in those settings unless you have your own practice and people come to you or they refer to you.
Wow, I've never heard that term. So they are stationed in every school in America?
Some schools have them, some schools don't. They're kind of like an accessory.
So they got their own office and they help students that struggle in learning, probably usually
learning, but it can be other areas. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Wow. Do you have any memory or encounter with those people in your student?
When I was teaching, oh man.
No, like the reading specialist. When you have you ever encountered a reading specialist as a student when you were growing up?
Oh, yes. I had, well, kind of like my brother was referred to a reading specialist. specialist, a learning specialist, I guess is what they're called, because they do all areas. Because the school that my brother went to, they were, oh, he can, like, he's always like running around class and he's not like focused. Like, maybe his reading isn't so great. Maybe you should assess him. And my parents are mortified because my parents are both brilliant. And they're like, our son. So they got these specialists and like they tested him in all these like different ways, like how does he learn, how does he able to figure things out, and the results come back. My brother is borderline genius. That the reason he doesn't focus in class is because it's way too simple for him.
Yeah.
So they had to like transfer an advanced program, and he did like super well. He was top of his class, VP of student government.
Oh, I see.
But it was really like, wow, okay, so sometimes people, when we see them and they're not doing well in our standards, it may not be because they're behind, it may be because they're not being challenged.
That's too funny. They referred to him to the specialist, and the only thing that they found out was not that he was lagging behind, but he was just too good to focus on that easy level class.
Yeah. Like the read on the board, he figured out in 5 minutes, and then he's like, I'm gonna go read a book. I'm gonna go over here.
Oh, I see. Yeah, they need to move him up so he can learn something more challenging.
Right, but there's other schools that do like they have accelerated non-linear programs. So he went to one of those, and he did awesome.
Oh, cool. So he went to a special school because he was very special in a good way.
In a good way.
Cool. So you didn't really feel called to go to that route somehow?
I did feel called on like 2 or 3 different occasions. Like I said, in high school when I started working there, the reason I started working in the cafeteria because I was kind of a little young for my age. I was like 2 years behind my classmates. I was really young. And so they had me in the cafeteria to work, and I just loved working there. And by the time senior year came around, my boss, he was hilarious, a little short, stocky guy. He'd just be like, girl, be in my office, don't burn anything. He would go off to his office. And he would just leave me in the kitchen to cook whatever, however, because I had been trained by him to just manage the kitchen really well. And at the midway through my senior year, he was like, I think you should take a break before going to college and stay with me. Let me completely train you. And this is vegetarian nutrition. Like 10 years ago, nobody was looking at that. So who knows if I had taken that opportunity, how different things would be. Because now, like, vegetarians like trend. But at the time, there weren't any teaching about plant-based or vegetarian nutrition as like a way of life. So that was the first time, and I felt like, no, my parents really want me to go to college. And honest, I probably should have gone because I was way too young for college. I was not mature at all. I nearly flunked out of college my first year because I was just all over the place. So that was my first time. The second time I was kind of called is when it was actually right after my brother's death, and I didn't handle that very well, and I was just kind of searching, what am I going to do with life? What is life about? Why am I here? And
is this the same brother you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
I only have one.
Okay.
So yeah, so it was maybe a year or so after his death. I didn't take the death very well, and so it was very dark during that time. But
Wow.
a lot of just searching and just trying everything to figure out, what am I going to do? What should I be doing? And I remember praying a lot and just spending a lot of time in nature and just kind of figuring out, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And at that time, I got an opportunity to go to this university, and they had combined. Some programs are separate, like you have to apply for one and the other. Others are just together. It was a combined dietetic and public health program in one. It was at like the top regional school. I could have gone there for very little amount of money because I was a state resident by that time. And, it was just, everything was like perfectly lined up. And I was just like, going back to school is at the bottom of things that I want to do right now. I don't want to go back to school. I'm done with school. I have one school. I have that I still have to pay off. No, I don't want to do that. But the opportunity was there. And I was just like, no, 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 I don't want to go back to school. And so that's how I ended up moving to Asia, is because I was like, I want to do something meaningful. I want to live in a different place. I didn't like the school also because it was a big public school and was known for being a party school.
Oh, I see.
And I don't want to be at a party school. I want to be at a small, where everybody knows you and you feel really, just safe. This was like 30,000 students at this school. It was huge. It was like bigger than cities.
Which state was
So,
that?
North Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah. So this university was huge party school, and I was like, oh my god. So that's why I ended up coming to Asia, and I was like, I want to live, I want to teach. I really enjoy teaching. And then when I landed, I kid you not, it was not even 12 hours, and someone was like, Sunny Day has a program in public health. And I was like, you can't run. So eventually, I think it was like a year, I ended up going to Senate and doing that program, and I really enjoyed it. And I was like, oh, I really love dietetics. I think around then, another one of my friends had died. Don't let death be the reason that motivates you, but you just kind of think about, well, how would I want to leave the world? What would I want to do to make sure the world was better? And so I thought, well, dietetics. And so a lot of soul searching, talking with people, and that's how I ended up coming back to do the program here, because I was like, I don't know if I could do 3 years of Korean to make sure I think it was like TOEIC level 4, I would have had to pass. Because biochemistry is hard. Biochemistry in the second language would be crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I ended up. And I did feel very much called. It was something really interesting when I got back and I was accepted into the program. The man who used to be my boss when I was in high school, that was within a month he died. It was just kind of like he almost like held on until I got back into nutrition. And he was gone way after.
We're talking about somebody in Korea or in America?
Well, I kind of took it as confirmation. I took it as like he was waiting for me to come back and do it.
I see.
Get back on. So, yeah. He had been fighting and he was really sick with cancer, so I was sad, but I was like, Mr. Allen, I'm doing this for you.
Oh.
Thank you for me, and
So the great old oak fell and a new thing came up.
that's exactly what it has given me life. Yeah, it was really encouraging.
It's crazy how when we choose career path, there are people that make impacts on our decisions, and it's crazy. So I had a question about why you enjoyed working at the cafeteria. You said you liked it. You liked working in the cafeteria. Another question is, why were you so young compared to other students?
Oh, I like working with. I don't need to be like some people are like, oh, I love cooking and I'm the chef, and I'm like, not me. I love food. The science of it. If you add this and you add an acid, what happens? So like, if you're cooking broccoli and you add lemon juice, it actually changes some of like the brightness and the. Why does that happen? How does your body absorb? So these are all the things I like. So I like the science of food. So I love working with food. I'm not the greatest chef in the world. I can hold my own. Thank you, Korea. You taught me like cook on a stove. Otherwise, I love baking, because baking is just like measuring stuff out right at the time and perfect heat, and then I'm done. But it wasn't until right before I came to Korea that I was like, okay, I still know how to cook off of the stove. So I love working with food. I love understanding like how does it help my body, and then like if I put stuff together, does that help increase the nutrient, or in some cases you want it to increase the absorption so you don't over absorb. So that's kind of why I like working in the kitchen and working with food. And food is a good way to get to people's, like if you can cook for people, they'll talk to you, and they're just more open if you share a meal. So I love like cooking for people and just kind of hospitality. Why was I so young? I started going to daycare kind of a thing at 2. Yeah. And so my parents worked in the hospital. They worked a lot. And so I kind of stayed with my mom and dad. And then when they went back to work, I stayed with different relatives. And I apparently, my mom and dad say, I asked a lot of questions about everything. I wanted to know, what about this? What about that? What about this? How does this work? And my parents were like, you need more stimulation than giving you. And I was very much very into exploring things, like go to sleep and take like a nap in the afternoon because kids are tiring apparently. And I would like crawl over my parents, open the door, go outside, go for a walk. So I was just like, I'm gonna be outside, I guess. So my parents were like, maybe she needs some more stimulating activity and some friends. So I started like a pre-K at 2. And then I just kind of going up. And so when I started school, it was like the minimum age, and I think the age is actually up now. I was up to about 6th grade. 6th grade, I was having issues with learning, dyslexia and things of that. I learned some skills that helped, kind of keep it together. And so when I started high school, I was 13. Most of my classmates were 15. And when I was a senior, I was years old, and most of my classmates were like 18 or 19. So even some of the people that like a year behind me, they were my age or even older than me.
So you pretty much like the science behind it, and pretty much the kitchen was some sort of a laboratory for you, and that science spilled over to human body, and you were also very interested in how the food works in the human body and all these things, and also it spilled over to the area of hospitality where you love interacting with people, how you make them happy, and they become their friends, so food wasn't just food, it was science in human relationship, in human body, in how things change in the kitchen, and pretty much it went really well with their curious personality. And so pretty much you started your academic life very early because of your parents working in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So your dad was also a nurse?
No, my dad works in orthopedics, so broken bones is what my dad specializes in. And he does a lot of the casting. Like when you break a bone, you have to put a cast. My dad didn't do like normal stuff. Oh, I fell and blah, blah, blah. Like he worked with people who were born with like birth deformity, and they have to like re-break the bone, so they have to get casting for sometimes 2-3 years so that it would heal correctly. But he's in like super high demand, so he works at like all these different places because they call him kind of like as a consultant now. But he does specialized bone work. And my mom, she was a nurse long before I was born, so she's seen the ER, the floors, surgery, the whole deal. So she is well versed. But so like their conversations were super interesting because they'd be like, "Oh, guess what came into the ER today? Pass the peas," and then like their guts were hanging out, and we had to like stitch them back together. I was like,
wow. I guess their scientific mind got passed down to you in a different way.
In a different way.
So your dad was a medical doctor?
Orthopedics. He did orthopedics. He was a medic for the military.
Okay.
And then he continued that once he did like 20 years, maybe 25 years in the military, and got out. He continued to do the same medical work in orthopedics and emergency kind of stuff. But I think he liked orthopedics the best, so he stuck with that.
So orthopedic doesn't fall into category of neither a nurse or a medical doctor? That's just something separate?
It works with both of those. So the technicians are typically They work in post usually. So when someone goes to get the surgery, after the surgery, that's when my dad comes in and like it's
Okay.
everything.
Okay, it's just its own entity.
Hmm.
Okay.
But you do work with the doctors. You work more with the doctors. I feel like my dad works a lot with a lot of doctors because all of them after surgery, after they do a consult, come to my dad and say, "This is the problem. This is what we need you to do." Blah 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 blah.
Oh, I see.
And also trains the interns who are going into in residency for med school. So they tell my dad, "Okay, we've got the interns coming. Make sure they understand this." And so my dad goes and trains them.
Wow.
Yeah, he's
I've never heard of that.
a good guy.
Yeah, I thought hospitals were made up of nurses, administrators, receptionists, doctors, and the cleaning people. And I thought that was it. So I guess there are more.
Quite a lot, like anesthesiologists. We have a lot of tech, like surgery tech. Orthopedics is this whole group. Yeah, dietitians are typically found in hospitals as well. Nobody thinks about it, but if you don't eat, you're not gonna get better.
Wow.
Even if I run a tube down your nose and I can do it, I mean, I don't personally do it. I do all the calculations when the nurse runs it too, because that whole body fluids thing.
So pretty much a technician that specializes in the bone area.
Yes, that's what my dad does.
Okay, cool.
But that's what he's done after he got out of the military.
Oh, I see. So, you have that family background where human body was something of a stimulating thing that kept you going in your developing mind, and they were constantly talking about it, and you were interested in food and kitchen and serving people. So you got your master's in Korea, you studied your bachelor's in America. So where are you now?
Right now, well, I had other plans, but COVID.
Okay.
Currently, I'm in Colorado. So while I've been here, I've been teaching people who are interested in nutrition. They would be nutrition. I'm like, oh, that looks interesting. I want to learn about it. But few nutritionists go the hard learning the chemistry, learning the anatomy and physiology. Like they don't do all that. They're just like, eat more vegetables. It'll be great. And I'm just like, what does an incomplete protein mean? Most people don't know. They heard, oh, that's an incomplete protein. That's an incomplete protein. Okay, well, what does that mean? And nobody can tell you because nobody took the time to sit down and go through organic biochemistry and study protein structures. And these classes are hard. They would give you a blank piece of paper. They'd be like, draw all 20 amino acids required for protein in the human body. All 20 of them, structures, names, and all. Okay, that was your test. So people who are specifically don't do all of that. So they can say it's an incomplete protein, but they can't tell you why. There's a lot of examples for those. So I'm teaching the students here about some of the science behind the nutrition to understand these fads that people are doing are not going to be good long term for health. I also do a lot of health lectures for the guests who come here because it's a lifestyle center. We do more holistic care. We're not just like, here's some pills, take these and you'll feel better, because that's just numbing the pain. It's kind of understanding, why do I have hypertension? Why did I develop cancer? Why, we don't do a lot of renal, but usually it's heart disease, diabetes, any kind of chronic diseases. I do a lot of counseling for the patients. I do nutrition lectures, but then if they say, I need more help, I don't cook. I had a patient who came through and they literally lived on coffee and boiled eggs and fast food. That's all they ate.
Wow. That's crazy.
Right. So when I'm asking them, okay, do you cook anything? And they are telling me, oh, I cook a little, but usually I just grab some fast food on my way to work or on my way home. Again, it's what they've been doing. If they grew up eating fast food and they have a job and they eat fast food. So now it's like, you have cancer, fast food is part of the problem, so it can be part of the solution. And the same thing for heart disease and diabetes and all of these things. So I spend time counseling them. Do you have a stove? Do you have a fridge? Do you have a blender? Okay, no blender. And then teaching them to eat whole food plant-based meals. Because you can be vegan and have vegan cheesecake, French fries, beer, Oreos, those are all vegan technically. Is that healthy? No.
Mm.
So this idea is, my focus is specifically food as medicine. That's what I use here. So while I'm here, those are the things that I do. And I also work in the cafeteria because we have some people with this person has cancer, that person has diabetes, this person, they've had part of their intestine moved. How do we increase nutrient absorption when it's gone? Like that part of the small intestine just been cut out. So it's not a regular, okay, we'll just make healthy food, but really kind of fine tuning the meals to make sure that people are eating well. And then even after they leave, they have 8 weeks that they can call me and ask, hey, I had a patient call today and they said, if you're really fatigued, I'm doing the they're just doing 2 meals a day and they're letting their body rest so their liver can do a lot of housekeeping. Your liver is a detox. You don't need to take a detox. So liver that works will do the job. But they weren't eating enough calories and the food position wasn't enough to sustain them. So the adult male at like 2 pounds trying to get by on smoothies and nuts, and I'm just like, you need more calories. That's why you're feeling tired. So some of it's pretty simple once you know the science. Some of it's a bit more complicated, especially when you're dealing with cancer. But that's what I do.
Wow. So
Make it simple.
wow. So you're working in a lifestyle center where a bunch of sick people come and they have different needs, and you teach them how to eat, how to cook, and they eventually leave and they keep asking you for help even after they leave, and you continue to help them so they can independently prepare for their own meal and continue to eat more healthy.
Right.
Wow. So didn't you say you worked in the hospital as a part of internship? And
So my internship was ended in May because of COVID.
okay.
So yes, so that's required for when they do hospital and community and food service. Like what was my third area?
Okay.
Yeah. So all 3 areas. I did both my hospital and food service in hospital.
Yep.
And
Yep. So you work for the food service company and the hospitals, and you mentioned in my previous conversation with you outside of this video that they don't feed healthy stuff to patients.
and it's a challenge because healthy. Okay, put it this way: you're gonna get help one of 2 ways. You pay for the front end, you pay for fresh fruit, vegetable, produce, all of that, or you're gonna pay for the back end by being hospitalized and with patient. Most people are paying it on the back end. They're just like, I'll go to the hospital. And even doctors are like, your kidney is not even in stage 4 yet, so do whatever you want. Get to stage 4.
Wow.
Again, doctors don't study nutrition. They will take up a A&P. We may have microbiology together. And maybe some of the chemistries. But for the most part, doctors, especially in school, they'll take maybe 25 hours, not 25 classes, 25 hours. The most I've heard about is 75 hours because doctors are more trained in acute care. Did they fall out and break their arm? Did they get in a car accident? That kind of thing. And they're trained on prescriptions and, they need penicillin, it's a bacterial infection. They're not necessarily trained on preventative health.
Wow.
Oh, there's a few programs beginning, but for the most part, doctors do not do that unless they take it upon themselves to do their master's of public health. And public health is just a science of prevention. So most doctors, when people start talking about nutrition, they're like, I will call the dietitian because it's out of their sphere.
Wow.
Now, there are some old school doctors, if they're older than maybe 50 or 60, they think they know everything, and they'll try to tell you, but honestly, most of them haven't taken the in-depth medical nutrition therapy classes where you're using food to help and heal your body.
Well, that's pretty crazy. So these hospitals are pretty much the place where people go because they're diagnosed with serious illnesses and diseases that requires dramatic measures such as medicine and surgery, but they don't approach these symptoms from dietary habit, foundational changes. Wow.
Yeah, and most people, you ask the average person, do you eat fresh? Do you cook food at home? Society has so twisted itself that looking at like getting any education or training in like nutritious food or having breakfast with your family or sitting down to eat a meal is very well now with the pandemic it's more normal, but last year this time everybody was just okay, I'll drive through for breakfast, drive through for lunch and pick up something, get a pizza. People are like, oh yeah, I had vegetables today. There was a on my fries. There you laugh, but and this is the thing, you have to learn how to interview people. Be like, are you getting 5 servings of fruits and vegetables, or 5 servings of fruits, 7 of vegetables? And they're like, yeah, no problem. I had mango cheesecake. That's mango. You're like, okay, mango cheesecake. French and ketchup, they count as 2 vegetables. Yeah, you hear all kinds of things, and this is kind of the annoying thing is that the beef, poultry, dairy council have a lot of power and pull. And so they're able to fund studies that say, oh, lean meat is okay. Eggs are okay because they contain this nutrient. But there isn't anyone funding studies that say plants, eat those.
Okay.
You know, it's just beginning that now they're beginning to have. I just finished a training on avocados. Technically a fruit, but a very high fat, polyunsaturated fat. And people are beginning to say by adding a fat into your diet, you actually end up losing weight. We're like, no, yes, because it's 1, a plant, fat, and 2, tons of fiber. And fat has higher satiety, so you technically need to eat less than good for it wrong. So all of these kind of, they're just beginning to look at how we were designed to eat plants. But for so long, the Beef Council, they've had huge marketing campaigns of hot milk and beef, it's what for dinner, or pork, the other way, or whatever. I mean, huge years and years of all this telling us that we need to eat all of these things to be healthy. I mean, not even 50 years ago, doctors were prescribing cigarettes because the cigarette companies had created all these studies to say smoking is good for you. But the same thing has been done with the dairy and the beef and the poultry and meat. And even they provide training. Because remember, the other part of being a dietitian is that you have to keep up your certifications. So I noticed that when the Beef Council does a training that we would get credit for to keep our credentials, it's usually free. Whereas the other ones usually have to pay for. And so if I'm a dietitian and I don't have the $6,000 laying around that I can be like, yeah, I'll pay for all my. If I'm going to choose the free ones, chances are I'm going to be trained by the beef and the dairy and the poultry. It'll be like, yeah, I heard in a study, or I was attended a training, and And again, the academy can't say anything because you're free to choose whatever is up to keep up your certification. So dietitians sometimes get a bad rap as not being non-partial, being very neutral, um, because they've been trained industries. And it's just now come about that you're getting stuff like California Strawberries is doing trainings, and the avocados are doing trainings. Those are just studies that are done, and they're affordable or free. Each credit is about $50, and you have to have 75 of them to keep up your certification. So that's the kind of the dark side. But I want to go with full food plant-based, so you should be able to recognize that this is an orange, and I can eat the orange, and I can get the nutrients. And most people don't understand supplements are there to supplement your food. They're not supposed to be your food. You're not supposed to run off and eat cheesecake and then take your vitamin C and be like, I'm fine. Your orange doesn't just have a C, it has a little bit of copper, it's got potassium, it's got a little bit of sodium, and all of these things packaged in good amounts for absorption because we're designed to eat plants, and you're going to eat that. When you start processing and cooking, especially vitamins are easily broken down and destroyed by either heat or time or acids. So when you're eating a whole food, plant-based diet, you're doing the best thing you can for your body. It's naturally how you're designed. If you even look at the structure of human blood versus plant with chlorophyll, they're almost identical. So when you're eating that, your body recognizes this is food. This is nutritious, delicious food, and your body can use it. Now, if you're taking something that has like trans fat's not natural. It's something we created because technology. Your liver looks at that and he's like, yeah, go stick that in storage. I don't recognize that, but storage is like your hips and your bare belly, or because your body doesn't recognize it as being food, as being something it can use to build up the body.
So these animal farming industries have tainted the integrity of the medicine, dietary practice, and all these things. So we need to be able to really discern which one is true and which one is false, and truly can improve our well-being. And pretty much what you're recommending is the whole plant-based food.
Yes.
Not
you should recognize it. Like if it was cooked, so you can't recognize, if you can't find it in nature.
Okay, raw, as raw as possible.
Well, there are benefits to cooking the food, but if you're like dicing it up and forming it, and then you can't recognize it anymore. I'm like,
yeah,
how nutritious is that? But if you slice a tomato and cook a tomato, you can still recognize it was a tomato.
Yeah. So don't process it too much.
Be fresh, and you still just taste it. And by all means, season your food. Make it. That's one of the best thing about Korea. Going to Korea and being like, you'll have flavors. Like I came back to America and I was like, oh, everything is like tons of sugar or
yeah, that's true.
It was like not flavor, like ginger and garlic and different herbs and spices and curry and bay leaves, and y'all season your food. It's delicious.
Yeah.
But I came back and it was painful that first year.
I was reading somewhere that Korean diet is more healthy, so Koreans are doing a lot better in their COVID. Yeah.
True.
Yeah. Crisis. So that's pretty cool.
And Koreans typically eat a lot of plant.
Yeah.
I mean, other Asians do, but Koreans especially, they like
yeah.
banchan and
yeah.
6 vegetables and like a bowl of rice.
Yeah. Not everything from the West is always better.
Right. And I feel like this is probably the hardest place to work because other countries that are older and they have figured this out, they eat a bit better than America. They'll eat fresher foods. They'll go to farm kids and all of that. Oh, the place here also has a huge farm. They do about 6 a week, and I've been able to go with them and give information. I do the Instagram. I'm still learning Instagram. I'm new to Instagram, but being able to like beets have all of these things except one thing. It has wood. So getting out to let people know, go to farmers market if you're gonna get what's freshly picked. It's not like Costco where they was green, they get looked in season and then they spoil it to you and nutritional quality's been like messed with. Other countries that are older, like several like dynasties have gone through, they picked out farmers markets, freshest, healthy storing methods in their prime. They just have a better understanding, I feel, about nutrition. Americans are like, we can make it bigger. It's not better. So I've also learned about agriculture because that's something we don't learn as dietitian. Because selenium, most people don't really think about selenium. I mean, did you guys ever hear of selenium?
What is that?
Do you know what selenium?
No.
Okay. Selenium is one of the necessary parts of nutrition, I guess. But if selenium is not in the soil, it will not be in your food. It's kind of like, have you ever heard of Vidalia?
What?
It's a kind of onion here.
What is it?
Vidalia onions?
No.
Okay. It's an onion, but
Okay.
Vidalia onions are sweet because the soil that they're grown in has full amounts of sulfur.
Okay.
So in this way, you can change quality and flavor of food depending on the soil quality.
Wow.
But Egyptians know nothing about farming.
Yeah.
We just did it. So I remember meeting a farmer, someone who went into business and became a farmer, and was blown away by how much stuff I didn't know about food because I don't know about it once it gets into your mouth. Once it's in your body, I can talk to you. But growing it is a whole different program. So selenium is a mineral, but your body needs it. An oxidant. It can help decrease certain parts of cancer. It can help heart. Even like mental decline. So your body uses it, but just very trace amounts of it. But again, if it's not the soil, it's not going to be in your food. So soil depletion, think about that. So there are dietitians now going into farming. There are dietitians going into schools or corporate because the field of dietetics and nutrition is so huge.
Well, that's crazy because you're talking about medicine, you're talking about dietitians and nutritionists, and then now you're talking about agriculture. I feel like everything has been so segregated that we have made this science or this life into something so separated from each other, so it's not whole. So it really starts from the ground. It starts from growth.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier about lean meat. What is lean meat?
Okay, so there are meats that are high fat, medium fat, and lean. And you can actually think about lean protein more actually. So high fat would be peanut butter. That's a high fat. It's plant based, but it's high fat. Beef, certain cuts, depending on where it is on the cow, can be very high fat. Other parts are leaner cuts, they have less fat.
Oh, I see.
But there are some plants that are high fat. Avocado is very high fat, but it's a different kind of fat.
Yeah.
It's very healthy, unsaturated. And I I could do a whole lecture on just fats and their cellular structure and how it works in the body. If it's saturated, unsaturated, polyunsaturated, monounsaturated, or trans fat. Okay, trans fats are bad. Stay away.
Wow. You know, Lily and I.
Stuff like that.
Wow. You know, Lily and I are contemplating running a food delivery farming business to be able to be self-sustaining and be more happy, away from the urban influence and all these things. What did you tell me as a dietitian?
Do it.
I should do. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think would be the first, second, third, fourth steps I should take? Do you think?
To have a farm? Or
Yeah, to go into the route. Yeah.
oh wow. I would say the place that has good soil, or that soil that you can build up.
Uh-huh.
I know there's lots of agriculture groups that they meet and they talk about these things like what's your soil content. They have things like measuring what's in the soil because if you have good soil, you can grow good food and healthy food.
Yeah.
So find a place that you can check the soil and make sure it has good soil and has a good water supply. Because just like humans, drinking water, like literally on the cellular structure, nothing happens without water.
Yeah.
The soil, the plants need water, so make sure that those two things are there. And then also find people who have farms. Talk to them and say, I mean, I have friends who have farms and they can give you an earful about these are things that they would have done differently to start their farm, and they're very like self-sustainable in the part of like food supply. Like y'all remember what happened with toilet paper in America? Everyone was going crazy.
Yeah.
Toilet paper, y'all.
Yeah.
Okay. Imagine that happening with food.
Yeah.
So in my mind, find a farmer. Farmers will be, food will be the new currency.
Yeah.
Farmers will be the bank.
Exactly.
Most people don't know anything about growing food. Even it wasn't until 5 or 6 years ago that I saw spinach or kale or eggplant like coming out of the ground, like still on the vine. I was like, I have pictures of me with the kale, like, because again, we're so disconnected from our food supply source, we don't even know
Exactly.
what it looks like.
Yeah.
We think carrots are always straight and orange. No, carrots can go crazy of colors, purple and yellow, and you know what I'm saying? So what we've been given at the stupor is a very narrow understanding of what's available to us to grow and keep our bodies healthy.
Yeah. Wow.
So that is something I would say. There's people I can definitely hook you up with who are farmers and they know stuff. And even myself, I would love to live on a farm and be able to grow and know that I'm growing something healthy. Because again, your family will be fed if anything crazy happens in the next couple years.
Yeah.
Your family will be fed, you're self-sustainable. You don't need to go to get a crazy job. Like, it's going to keep you away from your family. You're going to have to get up early and try hour work.
Yeah.
Make just to be able to get good food. I mean, Whole Foods is not cheap. That's like your whole paycheck.
Yeah.
To get organic foods. But if you could grow your own food.
Yeah.
And maybe work at something, just to make sure all the bills are paid, there's lights in the house. It's much more sustainable. So, get in contact with farmers, especially ones who do produce. Because there are cattle farmers apparently.
Yeah, I'm not interested in animals.
Yeah. They raise animals for slaughter, which I could never do. My parents both grew up on farms. And they told me how they had like pet chickens and goats, and I'm just like, I could never have a pet chicken and pet chicken. It would just be, I couldn't do it. So that I say is the first step is going to be sustainable. Start with the garden. Start growing stuff you like, basil, cilantro, whatever.
Cool.
And
Yeah.
then find what you need.
Yeah, we're doing something in our garden, and something is happening, but not like you're we're beginner farmers, so our plot of land is pretty empty. So we're pretty much barely launching this journey. So meeting those farmers and talking to them, getting the context from you would be great for the future. And so pretty much what I learned by interviewing you about an hour, more than an hour, is that things have been compartmentalized, industrialized, commercialized, and people lost ability to produce, to eat. They don't even have time, make time to eat and cook, and people are getting sick, and other people are making money because people are getting sick, and people are not interested in fixing those people from the foundational level of dietary habit, lifestyles. People are only interested in making money. They're making false agendas. They're making false advertisements about what they're trying to sell instead of trying to help people. So dietitians, doctors, nurses, technicians, farmers can do redemptive work to help people, to heal people, not to make money off of sick people.
Yes, please.
So yeah, it was very enlightening time to hear from you, Nicole.
I'm glad you asked.
Yeah, so it was really great. Is there anything you would like to say as we close this interview, or any of your future plan, or any of the beginner dietitians you'd like to say?
Oh wow. I would say kind of a thought is eat to nourish your body and soul. There are foods that they will fill you physically, but they don't nourish your body.
Wow.
And you know it because you can't think, or you're tired after eating, you're anxious. So eat fine. And to future who are looking to go into the aesthetics, you will make it. I have to say, my professors were amazing, and they loved what they did, whether it was biochemistry or nutritional science. But they were very passionate, but they were very much into helping people do that. I don't know how people who go to big universities where there's like 20 people in the class, and I don't know how you guys make it, because it's really intense. Usually we start off with maybe 30 or 40 students even looking to, oh, okay, great, I'll get to talk about food and cook, and by the time your graduation rolls around, like there's 5 or 6 people graduating with a degree, because it's
Wow.
the biochemistry blows them straight out. They're like, so people really become nutritionists because they don't have to do the science. They don't have to do the anatomy and physiology or the microbiology, or they just. But the problem is, if you don't understand that, you don't really understand what's happening in your body. So for those of you who are interested in going into dietetics, yes, it is a lot of mystery, but it's worth it.
So it sounds like nutritionist is more of a profession than a training or certification.
Well, some places are beginning to kind of make mini programs, but most of them focus on helping people change their habits,
Oh, I see.
which is a psychology thing, which I've already done that degree. So if you look online and say, oh, a nutrition program and kind of nutrition certification, a lot of it's just health coaching, but
Okay.
the science of nutrition.
Oh, I see.
Dietitians are the scientists of nutrition.
Oh, I
We
see.
just translate it to make it understandable for people who don't have that.
Oh, I see. Wow.
Yeah.
So nutritionist is pretty much helping you with immediate needs, but dietitians are the teachers and scientists and the bridge between the academics to practical life. Wow. Cool. Thank you, Nicole. It was a great interview, and I think I need to text you more about those people that you know, so I can grill them about farming.
Yes, definitely.
Because I don't know where to start. I don't know where to find land. I don't know where to go. You know what I mean? So yeah, I need to talk to them.
Well, I've heard that Korea's actually this was a while back, so I may be out of touch. But Korea was actually having problems finding people who want it, because people are just like, I'm done with the farm country life. I'm gonna go live in a city.
Yeah.
To like Busan. So I feel like there are places looking for people who want to farm.
Yeah.
The cost of land is steep though. Woo!
Yeah. Yeah, farming in Korea, farming in America, but I think farmers are very rare, so rare commodity. So yeah, I'm willing to go in the route, but it's just a huge shift from a teacher working in the wall, like surrounded by walls, and now going into the wild area. So it's something I need to do, but it's something that requires a lot of courage and knowledge. I don't want to just go out there and just keep being rained on and starving. Anyway, thank you, Nicole. It was a great interview. So yeah, so I'll contact you about the I would like to interview more of your people in your campus, like patients that have been healed, farmers, those people.
Okay, cool. I'll see if there's an interview with friends who are farmers.
Sure, I will edit your video and then they'll watch yours and they'll decide.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. See you guys tomorrow night.